Good morning, Robert Scribbler here, and welcome to a special edition of the OBX Wave Report where we put our weight such that it is behind the environmental activists that are fighting right now to shut down the Willow project by Conoco Phillips and to implore the Biden administration to halt the project. Um, I do want to talk about some of the reason for the push and pull behind this project. And the reasoning, we often get caught up in these battles and they inevitably push us to one side or another. But before I get into the climate impacts and in all of the potential harm and devastation that could result from this project being implemented. I do want to talk about the center of gravity of the climate crisis itself. And I often talk about the center of gravity being fossil fuel burning, but it's something much deeper. It's about a choice, really. It's about a choice for where we receive our energy from. And we made this choice a while back because it was seen as the expedient choice, the easy choice. Many called it the inevitable choice. Um, I'm here to say today that none of these assertions are true. That the choice to use fossil fuels was at its heart like a kind of gold rush mentality. It came from this quest for a quick gain. And also very rapidly, the science around fossil fuels began showing that this quest for a quick gain would damage our future. And at first, the vision of damage for the future appeared remote because the fossil fuel use was relatively small. But as fossil fuel use ballooned and expanded and became massive on a global scale, the future damage got closer and closer and closer, like the hyena in Hemingway's Snows of Kilimanjaro. It kind of starts off like way in the distance and then it just leaps toward you. And and that's what's happened. I mean, we got into kind of this gold rush, this black gold rush, which is kind of ironic. It ignited the forces of greed and and all of the things that surround that, the concentration of power, the risk of a type of resource curse, the risk of authoritarianism that comes from the concentration of power, all surrounding this kind of black gold rush. And and now we've got a a global environmental catastrophe that looms as a result of all of that combination of greed and harm from extracting this goop from the ground and burning it in a way that will ruin and wreak havoc upon the life support systems of our planet if we continue doing it. And here on the coastline, in the Outer Banks, on the edge of the world, this beautiful place where 500,000 people a day love to come in the summertime to enjoy the beauty of nature and to frolic. Places like this are under the gun from pipelines like this in this picture from Gen Z for climate change. Um, and so we have a choice. We have a choice where our energy comes from, and we have a choice for the future. But we shouldn't denigrate the need for energy. And the need for energy here in the West, in Western democracies, is keen, particularly now as we have autocratic states like Putin's Russia, petrostates, invading democracies like Ukraine and trying to use energy as a weapon. And so every day in our government, because we are a government of we the people, we make this choice. We decide how much effort we put toward destruction and greed and harmful concentrations of power, or how much energy we put toward clean energy sources like wind and solar and hydro and electric vehicles um, and all of the economy that grows from that, which is a completely different kind of economy than the economy that grows from fossil fuels. It's a much more democratized economy. It's an economy that rapidly improves through scaling, and it's an economy that preferences innovation and a positive form of technological development that works with the life support systems of our planet and that works with the democratized governments of we the people by sharing power more and wealth more. So so there is a big choice and we can contextualize it in the tension surrounding the Willow project. And so let's get into it. Let's talk about the Willow project. Right now, the Biden administration and I'm just going to show you this headline from CNN. Ella Nilsen over at CNN, who's been following this beat, who wrote this excellent article yesterday on the controversial Willow project in Alaska. And but Biden is going to make this choice. And let's be crystal clear. Biden has been a very positive president for clean energy and climate action. And now the Biden administration is under a lot of pressure from various organizations and entities to force through this project by Conoco Phillips, this project from hell, if you will. We're going to talk about this, but and the pressure is coming from energy and the need for energy and the cynical who seem to think that we can't either seem to think that either we can't pursue a different path on energy or who have made the even darker choice to pursue energy through harm for short-term gain for themselves individually at at the cost of harm to the rest of us, to basically everyone. And that's the choice that's happening right now. Now the Willow Project, there are tensions geopolitically as well, and and so there is a perception that if the United States does not choose, and this is a perception by the cynical, does not choose to implement the Willow Project, then it's an abdication of power because there is a perception that power surrounds the production of fossil fuels. But if we were instead to say, if we said no to the Willow Project and instead produced more impetus for clean energy development in this country and a strengthening of the clean energy systems in this country, we could have our power as well, and it would be a just power. not a power tainted by the darkness of climate destruction or by the darkness of authoritarianism that stems from this kind of harmful energy source which perpetuates the resource curse and the formation of authoritarian systems through the constant concentration of power. All right, so let's get into the Willow project. And the story of the Willow project is linked to the story of the Arctic in its warming. And over the past 71 years, the Arctic has warmed 4 times faster than the rest of the world. Now, the rest of the world has warmed rather rapidly, more rapidly than we have ever recorded in our history, and more rapidly than possibly in any geological epoch. And this warming has been driven not by the sun, not by anything else. It has been driven by fossil fuel burning. There are reasons why the Arctic has warmed 4 times faster than the rest of the world. And the the main reasons are that we have a cycle of amplifying feedbacks in the Arctic. These amplifying feedbacks come from snow loss and ice shelf melt that reduce the reflection of sunlight. It comes from just generally, this is a global phenomenon, the increased water vapor and clouds, which form more of a blanket, which more evenly distribute heat across the globe. And if heat is more distributed evenly, the Arctic gets a greater share of that. And then last of all, the melting of permafrost releases methane, which is also a powerful greenhouse gas. And the melting of permafrost itself was triggered by the burning of fossil fuels. The accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere heated the permafrost and caused it to release another greenhouse gas in the form of methane. So we have this higher concentration of methane in the Arctic. We have the loss of snow and ice cover in the Arctic that reduces the reflectivity and causes more heat to concentrate in the Arctic. And then we have the more even distribution of heat around the globe due to the blanketing effect of water vapor and clouds. And here at the the National Snow and Ice Data Center, we've got this nice graphic of some of the feedbacks in the Arctic and why frozen ground matters and the interplay between various sources of carbon in the carbon cycle and then the base emission coming from fossil fuels. And so what's happening right now in the Arctic is that the global system is out of balance. And we are seeing the permafrost begin to melt. We are seeing the ice recede. We are seeing more and more heat getting injected into the Arctic. And now, on top of it all, we've got ConocoPhillips that wants to go up into the Arctic and use energy to refreeze the ground that is thawing because of the burning of fossil fuels and extract more fossil fuels, which is going to accelerate the loss of permafrost in the Arctic. It's going to accelerate the loss of ice in the Arctic. It's going to accelerate the methane feedbacks in the Arctic. It's going to accelerate the loss of ice in the Arctic, particularly of glaciers, which are going to sink our coastlines if we keep letting it happen. Places like here, this beautiful place where I live and so many of us live, so many human beings live. We love the coastlines, and much of humanity lives close to a coastline or wants to be near a coastline. So That's what's happening. You got this crazy, sick, bizarre, infernal project that is going on in the Arctic right now, and and that has hooks in our political process, um, and and that will contribute to catastrophe if it is undertaken. It will contribute greatly to climate catastrophe. And so we must ask it to stop. So we're going to join with 350.org and ask Biden and the Bureau of Land Management to stop the Willow project. But we're not just going to do that. We're going to ask them to stop the Willow project and not leave things hanging. We're going to ask all of the stakeholders, including the Republican Party, which I know stands against climate action. They have consistently, but nonetheless, we're going to ask them. We're going to say to the Republican Party, stop the BS, support clean energy and the foundation of our democracy by supporting democratized energy that protects the climate, that reduces harm and damage, and the feeds of harm and damage into authoritarianism. Stand with the base sentiment of of a government of we the people by fighting the things that will cause the fear and the harm that will feed authoritarian impulses, and do the right thing. Let's, instead of allowing the Willow project to go through, let's instead commit ourselves to doubling down not on harm, but on our investment in clean energy, because we know that this decade carbon emissions have to fall by 50% in order for us to reach a somewhat safe pathway on climate. And this is not me saying it, this is the climate scientists saying it. I implore you to ask climate scientists like Dr. Michael Mann what we need to do. And what I have heard him say is that carbon emissions need to drop by 50%. So ask him and listen. Don't be stupid. Don't play politics with this. If you're playing politics with it, you're playing a game of short-term personal gain at the expense of your fellows. And you may say you care about your neighbor. You may say you follow a certain spiritual guide, a certain religion, a certain benevolent religion. If you do, then act like it. So yes, we're going to ask Biden to stop Willow, but we're also going to ask the Republicans to stop the BS. And we're going to join with the other Democrats on national resources Democrats, and we're not only going to make a stand on climate and environmental justice, but we're also going to make a stand for America's position as a leader for the globe, America's position as a defender of democracy in Europe and as a defender of democracy in China. And we can do this by being a leader in clean energy and reestablishing our power as a power for justice through clean energy, through technological development of energy sources rather than extractive exploitation of energy sources, and technology that is aimed at sustainability, at balance, at life, technology that is aimed at preserving life, at defending life. And if you care about life, you'll join us. And if you care about real freedom, you'll join us. And if you believe in the future, in a good future, in a fantastic future of prosperity and beauty and wonder and real wealth and richness that is shared, not just for a few, but for we the people, then you'll join us. So thank you for joining me for this special edition of the OBX Wave Report, this special session where we surf the waves, the perilous waves, the gnarly waves of global politics. And we find our pocket, our sweet spot, our way forward, our angle through the trouble. And we implore you, stop the Willow project, stop this infernal project from hell. And let's look for more of a future of that shining city on the hill for our nation and for the world. A shining city that draws from the wealth of knowledge that we have and puts it to good purpose, to life, to good results, to a just civilization, to one that does not ruin the very creation from which we have sprung. That we resolve ourselves not to be destroyers of the earth, but to be preservers.